All right, welcome back. And I'm joined again with James and Guy today. So, there's we've been getting a lot of questions about GDPR recently. UK changed their GDPR on March 2023. I think 4th of July was the EU. They introduced new enforcement. And obviously, this is starting to reflect on a lot of HubSpot users. So, just to kick it off, I want to see, James, what's kind of been your experience with that with your clients?
I mean, it's definitely becoming more of a consideration, especially with the UK clients. Obviously, there have been a lot of compliance changes in the past and the introduction of GDPR features to HubSpot around them. But those have definitely been getting stricter, especially now that the UK in particular has left the EU. They've obviously had to then go off and create their own variation of those rules. They could have obviously taken the EU ones as they were and just copied them, but they have made quite a few variations of those to suit the UK specifically, and that's included a lot of things around the processing of data and the transfer of data in particular, and that sort of mainly goes around like the sensitive data being passed between different parties from like in the UK to outside the UK, be that in the economic area, European economic area, or further afield. And that's really proving to be quite a bit of a problem, especially in the global world that we live in today. So like a lot of people work remotely, a lot of people do more independent contract work these days, and a lot of companies are really leveraging skills from overseas and all around the world to grow their business. So these rules and these data considerations, they're very important to consider because the changing geographical landscape of employment and contracting is really having quite a big impact on the considerations and the legal considerations that companies have to have. Obviously, I'll say that the research we've been doing, obviously, we are a HubSpot partner, so we do have familiarity with these rules, especially as they relate to HubSpot. But we're not obviously a legal team, so nothing that we discuss today is going to be legal advice. You should of course seek independent legal advice if this is something that you want to focus on. But we're going to talk about everything that we can and be as helpful as we can from the perspective of HubSpot and of companies using systems like HubSpot. And Guy from our HubSpot onboarding team is going to be taking us through several of those concepts today.
Great, great. And what about
That's
you,
great.
Guy? I know you're working with a lot of clients, and what are they kind of doing to plan and prepare, or what are they kind of challenges they're facing or fears?
Well, we have a lot of different situations because we have clients from all over the world. So there are clients that think they need to comply with the GDPR. There are clients that don't know they have to comply with the GDPR. So we've been facing some different situations since a long time ago. For example, last one I can remember was really recent. A small startup, which was a client. They were an early stage startup. It was a SaaS, so it was kind of a fitness app, and they were from South America, trying to sell services to Europe. So people in Europe, all over Europe, could download the app, could try to experiment their product and start buying the things that they sold in the app, but they faced a problem I don't think they had never saw it coming. They were seeking investment and things were going well. They tried to get investment from this company. They wanted to grow, right? So when the final stages of the talking to the VC, and the VC were told from their lawyers that they could not go on with the investment because this little startup did not comply with the GDPR. And this was a serious problem for them. Why? Because this venture company, they have to comply with the GDPR. They were a VC from Spain, and they said, if at least just one word of any client, from any data, especially personal data, gets out and gets leaked, we are screwed with you just the same. So sorry about my language, but this is serious. So this is really serious. They lost their investment. They took them more than a year to start running another serious investment series again, and this all because of the GDPR. So the investment company that they see said,
Wow.
no, we cannot accept that, and I'm sorry about that. We want to invest in you, but since you do not comply with the regulations, we have to put our money somewhere else. So this was the last one. I remember that the owner and the employees of the company, they were about 20 people working in there. They were just crushed. They were just crushed because they had a good product in their hands. I mean, they could get a float after that, but can you imagine being installed more or less a year from your plans and waiting for the competition to go in Europe and start to getting big in this market? So it was a huge problem for them, actually.
Yeah, sounds like a nightmare. So yeah, that's really big one.
A big
So
one.
I think just for those that not quite sure what GDPR are, or the different types that are kind of out there, you want to just get a quick overview of what that is?
100%. I have something prepared here so we can go through the what is in general the GDPR and what should we expect from the GDPR, and also how. What do we need to do in general terms to comply with the GDPR and not have any types of problems, legal problems? And well, I don't know if you know, but the fines, the penalties for not complying with the GDPR are big, Of course, the biggest fines we have examples of are Meta, are Google, Amazon. They are in the hundreds or dozens of $1 million per complaint. So, but they're a really big company. They can afford that in some way. The problem is that when a normal company, like anyone that's watching us, gets into these kinds of problems, this could be a real nightmare financially speaking as well. Okay, so I would like to walk you through. First thing that I think that's one of the most important things to understand is that who is the GDPR for? A lot of people don't know that if they have to comply, if they have to do this or that. And one thing I can tell you for sure is that in most cases, almost 100% of the cases, GDPR is for your business. It doesn't matter if you're just a small company, if you just have an Instagram profile, trying to sell anything in there, or if you're a big company, if you're an industry, if you're a digital company, GDPR is for you. And there's a reason, a specific reason why is this for. GDPR is the General Data Protection Regulation. Okay, it was born, let's say like that, in May 25th in 2018, and it was passed. This text, the regulations were discussed and passed in the European Union. Why? Because they needed and they wanted to protect personal data from European Union citizens. Okay, this was the general idea. That's what they wanted to do. It's an important thing to do. If you start thinking, okay, but I'm not in the European Union, so why do I have to comply? Well, that's easy, because if you're willing to sell anything, physical product, service, a digital service for anyone, if one of your clients or one of your providers or one of your partners are located in the European Union region, you have to comply, because the European Union, the GDPR, looks to protect the data, the personal data for these specific type people, the ones that are based on European Union or were born in there. So it doesn't matter if your business, for example, is in Peru. It does not matter, because if you sell something or if you have their data stored or treated by your system, and this person is from the European Union, you will need to comply with the GDPR. So this is the reason why we say that this is for everybody. This is really important. And just for you to see some of the personal data that we need to be compliant with the GDPR in order to treat this kind of data, it's, for example, the full name of a person. How many companies out there send forms and then send landing pages, and they have a lot of things digitally saying applications that collect the full name of a person. So this is considered to be sensitive information. As you can imagine, some of this information can be used to do harm to people. So that's why the idea of protecting this data. Okay. And since we were talking about the GDPR in UK, I have something just for everyone to understand a little bit of how big this is. After the GDPR in Europe, a lot of countries rushed to get their own types of laws and regulations as well. And we have a big one in the United States, which is the California Consumer Privacy Act. And now they have an addendum. So it's called it's called CPRA. It's because they keep adding lines to the text to protect even more the data from this specific citizens. Brazil's got its own, South Africa as well. Bahrain was the first country in Middle East to have a data protection law. Canada jumped in the boat as well. And the UK one is very important to talk about, to mention it, because this is the one that's the most recent one we have. In November 2023, they were voting for the specific bill to pass. And it has a few things that are really important to mention, especially regarding the data transfer and the data portability. These are things that in some other countries, they're not specifically treated, but they are all aiming to add this to their own regulations. And it talks a lot about you as a user, you as a client, or you as a provider to some company, you as a partner to any company, having the control of your data. They stepped up the game a little bit. And I mean, of course, all of the regulations, all of the countries, they do have texts that say that you can ask for companies to delete your data, to tell you where your data is stored, and to tell how much data they have from you. Now, this new one from the UK, it specifically says that you can ask a company, for example, to transfer where your data is stored to somewhere else. So if a company has a server, for example, in the United States, and all their data is stored there, a user can now ask for relocation of this data, and they have to do this. They're still working on the specifics, but the company has some days to comply with that. The company needs to obey. The company needs to deliver what is being stored in their systems. How is it being stored and protected? And especially, the user can ask for the complete deletion of this data. So the company cannot store any data that we do not want to be stored. This is very, very, very important. Just one of the parts that they added to the text.
And I think what was really interesting was that the clarification there was that data transfer included anything seen on a screen. So any data that's seen on a screen is still data transfer. So that was one of their new clarifications. So people were thinking just having data on a server was good enough, but it's really gone above and beyond that.
Exactly that. Data.
Think about a situation like a lot of companies are hiring VAs overseas now, particularly in like Asia Pacific region, to help them with their day-to-day work. Like perhaps you want to give them access to your Hubspot account or your email account or something like that, so that they can provide sort of secretarial help for you. That is, if they're not employed by you, that is like a data transfer that's happening outside of the UK and outside of the EU in that situation. So that's really something to consider.
Since the world gets more and more globalized, I mean, for the last 20 years, it's very normal for companies to have, for example, their accounting service in another continent as well. People can hire lawyers from different countries. People can hire different types of services that are digitally provided. But as soon as your provider, as soon as your partner, as soon as your employee from another country, I mean, your independent contractor looks at this information at the screen, this represents a harm to the privacy of the data, because we all know we can screenshot a screen, we can take pictures of it, and the sole fact that we know that information can be a liability for the company, but especially can be a harm for the user. So this is a very important thing to mention, that data transfer is not only moving megas and gigabytes from different hardwares to different computers and different systems. It's not only that. Data is data. So if we know about it, we are transferring knowledge, and in this case, information. And let's try to talk a little bit about how our specific clients, especially using HubSpot, have faced different situations, and we can also walk you through in a couple of examples as well on how people think they're doing the right thing, but they actually not. Okay, this is very important because a lot of companies, they do not seek for legal advice. So some of them may think that, okay, we're protecting the user's data, but there are details that you must not forget. Okay, things that people normally think that only manual actions are harmful. For example, copying a database, sending to a friend a telephone number from a provider, giving away how much you pay, for example, for some services. These are manual actions, but behind that, there are a lot of algorithms and tracking and registering information from the users. So behavior tracking is something very serious and something that we all need as well. I mean, we have to face it that being tracked is not 100% bad. We have a lot of situations that we need to be tracked in order to have a better service, for example. I can give you just a little example. I rather have been shown ads from a bakery that's, I don't know, 2 kilometers in 2 kilometer radius from my house. I do not want to see a bakery showing me ads that they're located in another city because I'll never go there. It's not something that I will do. So this information is the geolocation information. Some systems can know where I am connected from, so they can target ads to that specific place. Let's say that I'm seeing this ad from a bakery right across the street, which I didn't know they exist. This is something positive. But even to create this positive situation, you need to obey very specific set of rules in order to protect my data, because the system knows more or less where I live, but I don't want anyone else to know that. I don't want the owner of the bakery knowing that. I don't want their providers to know that. I don't want anyone to have access to this particular information, and they can use it either to show me different ads that I don't like, that I may not want to see, or to use it against me as well. This is let's remember that in the internet, people can do a lot of harm. And as much of the more information you give, the more information they have to go against you in a lot of situations, especially scam. And we tend to think that only people fall into scams, and we forget that companies do as well. So it's a very serious thing having all of the information around without proper protection. So what we're saying here is we need regulations to protect ourselves from any harm that can be done in the internet, but also we need to do this in a safe environment because we still need to use the internet. This is something that will never go away. And this information transfer will always happen. We just need it to happen in a safe environment. So when we think about specifically our clients inside HubSpot, we have seen a lot of difficulties achieving that GDPR status in using HubSpot. And we're here to show that it's perfectly doable. Okay, just like James said before, we're not here to advise you legally on what you need to do, but this is some technical tips and advices you can follow to start complying with the GDPR and protecting the data from your customers, from your providers, from your partners, from anyone that goes into your systems. So I'm going to walk you through a little bit on how to activate those settings. Let's talk a little bit about consent. This is a very specific and important thing that inside HubSpot, you need to take some action. You need to decide how to show this to your clients, what kinds of and what formats of texts you need to show to your users as well. Because one thing is that we know for real, people can give their information in exchange for anything else, an offer, product, a subscription, but this consent needs to be informed, and this consent needs to be almost all of the times explicit as well. So the user needs to tell us, okay, I am okay with you having my data. I'm okay with you storing it, treating it, using it, but with limitations. So that's what we're going to talk. I am so sorry. Talk about. We need to talk a little bit about cookies as well. I think everybody knows what the cookies are for the internet. They keep track of the path you followed between websites, applications, web pages. So and the legal basis for processing this data. We are focusing a lot here in saying that this is a legal situation. So please understand that we need to follow some legal rules. And I'm going to show you right now how to do this in HubSpot and how is the more or less the best way for you to use forms inside HubSpot. Because it's okay to collect information, to collect data from users, but there's some specific ways that we need to follow in order to comply with these rules. I am right here. So I'm going to walk you through here inside HubSpot. Let's get back to my data here. And you can go here in settings in this wheel. And then we will start looking at privacy and consent options right here on the left side. So the privacy and consent options from HubSpot, they comprehend a lot of things that the GDPR asks us to be compliant with. Okay, so we start with data privacy. Okay, when you create a HubSpot account, or if you never changed any of these options, you will see this option set to be not private, which means that the data privacy settings from HubSpot are not on. Okay, this is something a lot of clients didn't even know. When some that we talked about, they were trying to manage their privacy settings outside HubSpot, even though they used HubSpot, such as creating forms somewhere else with a checkbox for acceptance for the consent, or they were trying to create different types of privacy policies and publish in the website. And what we can say to you is that when you hit this place, the data privacy settings page, you can turn it on. Okay, as soon as you turn it on, a lot of things in HubSpot will change and will help you, and at least will guide you through being compliant with the GDPR regulations. So the first thing we see here is that HubSpot will first, if you want to require a legal basis to communicate with your contacts. Okay, what does this mean? This means that to every single person in your CRM, they will need to have a legal basis. I mean, an explicit reason on why you're sending that communication to them. You need to inform the system just in case of an audit in the future, in case someone asks for their data deletion, for example, or if someone asks you, what kind of data do I have stored in your systems? You need to inform HubSpot why you're storing this person's information in order to send emails. Why does this checkbox does not come unchecked by default? This is a part that we will insist on this. This is the part that you will need to seek legal advice in order to understand where are you located in the world, which kinds of clients, providers, and parties you have, if you need to have this on. From our side, we can tell you that we will probably need this. It's very hard for a company that does not need at all a legal basis to communicate with contacts, okay? These are the exceptions. The rule, for the general rule, I'm sorry, it's not for 100% of the people, but the general rule is that you will need to have this acceptance from the client and to inform why you're communicating with him. As soon as you tick this box as well, this is another, sorry, I'm going to save this. This is another setting that will be available for you. Set a legal basis for surveys. So you can imagine that sending an email marketing for someone saying, okay, summer offer, 50% off on average on the whole store. This is a type of content. Okay, but there are other types of contents. For example, surveys. Surveys are more detailed information collectors because you're not only getting the user's name, email, date of birth, for example, you are getting their preferences, their personal preferences. So if you send a user a survey asking, for example, if they liked your service, how good would they rate the attention they received, this is something that is very personal, and they will probably, I can guarantee you actually, that no one wants this information to leak out to the world because it's just your own preference, and you're probably answering the survey because you either want to help the company, giving your honest opinion, or is that plus you've been given an offer for for answering that survey. So surveys, they have a specific type of, of section here. Because of that, we collect personal preferences, depending on, of course, what we ask in that survey. When we talk about every single thing that are in the privacy settings, one really important is the consent. Okay, there are two types of consents for the GDPR and for everything else, which are a implicit consent and the explicit consent. The implicit consent, when we transfer this for the internet life that everybody knows, they're usually represented by those texts in forms or in web pages when you get in for the first time that says, by submitting this form, you accept our terms and conditions and privacy policy. Or by continuing navigating this website, you accept the cookies to track you. Or by sending your email here, you accept that we will treat your data, store your data, and use it. So this is an implicit consent, okay? Our clients, in general, some people tend to want this kind of configuration in their forms and web pages, because some people think that if a client doesn't have to actually respond that they accept being tracked and having their information stored, this can sometimes spook some clients. Companies are afraid that clients will just go away if they have these settings on, for example. And a couple of things that we learned with clients is that this is not true. People actually are looking for being protected. People actually are looking for having their own information and private information being taken care. So what we saw with a couple of clients, I can't remember now, the difference between forms with no consent whatsoever, forms with just this implicit text that says, by sending this form, you accept our terms and conditions, and the form that someone needs to check the box, they were irrelevantly different. So the difference was not that big. To be very honest, it didn't impact in their business at all. I'm remembering two different clients with two different businesses. So what we learned is that as we go through time, people are getting more concerned about their privacy. So this will not impact your strategy overall. If you're still delivering a good product, a good service, and you're treating their data correctly, trust me, users and clients will thank you for that. This is the most important part of the things. So in HubSpot, we have the consent options here. What can we do with these options? I mean, if the GDPR is telling us that we need to inform the client that we'll store his data, why do I have options? Why do I have to choose between one or the other? Shouldn't it be just a checkbox that everybody needs to check? Kind of. It's not like that. We have different types of consent, just like I just said, the implicit and explicit. And things are not black and white. We have a range of colors between those two options, especially between different industries. Okay, if you, for example, your industry is the health industry, all you will need to follow the most strict regulations you will face. Why? Because you have a specific type of data that is today the most valuable data we have in internet, which is your health information. Just to picture an example, imagine a company that can target you ads, for example, a health insurance provider, for example, that will target some ads with different pricing just because they know that in your family, for example, runs a specific type of a genetic disease. This is not fair. So, okay, so you have the right to keep this private to you and only to you and your doctor. No one else needs to know that. If you don't want to tell the world that, you don't have to. So this would be really unfair. And to be honest, some companies are still playing this tricky game of targeting ads using very specific information. But that's why you need to choose. do my company really need to have the most strict options on and configured? Only a lawyer could help you with that. But from my personal and professional experience, I would say always go to the most strict options. This will protect you and your company as well, because the most important thing is to protect the user's data. Okay, this is what we aim to when we want to comply with the GDPR regulations, and when the GDPR obligates us to comply. Okay, so in HubSpot, we can edit the content. If you feel for some reason that this content can spook your clients, or is it too much technical, or is it doesn't talk to your company's tone of voice, you can change it. Okay, this is not a problem as long as you keep the main parts of the text in there, which is everything needed for the client to have an informed decision whether they want to follow and follow along and buy your product or give you more information. They need to know what they're giving up. They need to know where is it going to be stored. They need to know that you are willing to protect this information. And this can happen for a legitimate interest. And what does that mean? A legitimate interest, for example, is when you sign a contract with your accountant. Okay, your accountant, you have a contract, and it's considered legitimate interest when your accountant sends you an email. It can even send you a kind of a marketing email as well to you, but this is considered to be a legitimate interest. Why? Because you have a contract between you two that needs to be filled. And the best way to delivering this service is having communication. So it's something that it's implicit. Okay, it does not work to every single professional or every single industry. So again, please seek advice for your own business, for your own services, to understand whether a legitimate interest is valid for all your clients, all your providers, or not. We've been having problems with a couple of services and clients. I mean, they had problems with some partners, because with partnerships, you usually sign a contract saying that, I don't know, I'm going to pay you a commission for something, and you get benefits from me, and it's a two-way street benefit. But not every time it's a legitimate interest. Sometimes you need to ask explicitly if you can communicate with your partner and what kind of information you should share, and data transfer. For example, invoices. Who should see those invoices? All of the company, just the accountant, just the financial team, just the CEO? There are different ways that information can be transferred and different levels of access into this. Okay, so one of the things that you need, this works for everybody, for every company, you need to have a privacy policy. Okay, you need to inform the users, how are they being protected? Are which systems are you using? Which kinds of information are you tracking? Which kind of information are you not retaining, just discarding? Which ones you do retain and use it, for example, for retargeting ads or to send communication? Having a privacy policy is one of the most important things you can do. So if you can start by having a privacy policy, I would say that this is for the best, because when you write a privacy policy for your company, you're understanding the company as a whole. Which people, which teams, which kinds of level of access do people need to have access for particular information? Who can see telephone numbers, for example, from our clients? Who are the people that can manage and edit information? Which kind of information should I share with my providers? Which kind of information am I going to keep for myself, and which information we're going to delete? So understanding how your company works and how your systems are built is very important, so you can write a very good privacy policy, and this one should be published in your website. Yes, this is one of the things that this is a basic requirement So if you don't know where to start, I would start by looking how can someone help you write a privacy policy, an adequate privacy policy for your company. Okay. And one of the things that I like the most actually in HubSpot on the GDPR settings, I think, yeah, no, I'm sure this is the thing that I like the most. The subscription types for information. I mean, you have a lot of different users, and two of them specifically are the most different types of users you have: clients and prospects, or leads, or someone that's not a client yet. They are very different for specific reasons. And you understand, I think you should understand at least, that they need to receive different types of communication. You cannot, you should not at least send email marketing selling your product for someone that already bought it. This does not make any sense because they already have it. You're just wasting your email sending and effort trying to reach this person that already bought from you. So HubSpot brings to us three basic types of subscriptions. We can add more than this three. We can delete some. We can change it in the way that it works for our company. First one that HubSpot brings us is the marketing information. What does this mean? This means that when any user is subscribed to this particular type of information, they will receive market information. You're marketing your company, your products, your services to this particular group of people. But you can also have a customer service communication. This is for the people that were clients, that are clients. It depends on your business and what you sell, but it's different. You don't need to send marketing information to them. You need to sell a different type. And of course, you can use your marketing hub in HubSpot to send emails one-to-one. This is also important because when a company sends an email to you, they have to be able to do that. And not technically, everybody can send an email, but they need to be able to do this from your side. You as a user need to accept that communication. Okay, so this is just an example, this checkbox here, of how it will appear in your form when you use this. Okay, I agree to receive other communications from. This is my test account, and it will appear, of course, the name of your company. I'm going to show you very quickly how these subscription types work, because one thing is for sure, there are a lot of things to do in the GDPR settings, a lot. And you really should start today if you haven't started already, because it's not impossible, of course not, but you don't want to make a mistake. That's the most important thing to understand. Okay, so when you go right here on the left side, way down, and in marketing, you have the email option, you will see the subscription types here. I'm sorry, this one. These are the ones that HubSpot brings to us by default. And as I said, you can create a subscription type. You will tell people which language are they going to see, in this case in French, and you can say newsletter, for example, weekly newsletter. What does that mean to the GDPR? It means that you're creating something that people will opt in, people will decide to receive this type of communication. And when they do, every single communication you send to this particular group of people needs to obey the rules that you set for yourself, for your company. It should be in French. It should be, in this case, a newsletter type. And you can actually come here and break it down a little bit for you to understand, is this kind of for the marketing team? Is this a sales effort? What is this? Let's say this is marketing, and I'm going to send an email. You can see here that you will also need to have subscription types if you want to just grab your phone and call people. So this is really, really, really important, because as you see, if I create this type of subscription, people will now be able to opt in and receive this communication from my company And they can also opt out, for example. This is a very important part. They choose to get in and receive it, but they also can choose, they can also choose to get out. If they, okay, I'm tired of this content, or I don't need it anymore, or it no longer interests me, they can just opt out and unsubscribe for this particular type of content. This is compliant with the GDPR. Why? Because we are giving the user the power to decide. This is the important part. The users need to have this power to want to receive anything or to just reject that content at all. So this is basically what we need to do in order to keep your company safe from fines, from problems, and especially, trust me, you want to protect your users, your clients, your providers, your partners, your employees' data. You will want to do that, and it pays off. Okay. Scott and James, so far, do you have any questions or anything that we could talk about right now?
I think, yeah, I'd like to switch gears a little bit. You know, this has obviously covered a lot from your end user perspective. It's very, very critical. But I also want to touch on a little bit from your supplier point of view. So many Hubspot instances in the past where you have consultants or other supplier, you know, the lazy method is that you've just come along and you've just added all your vendors straight into the HubSpot. So, you know, I think this is also quite a concern. So I know James was dealing with this situation quite a bit. And, you know, I just thought you'd kind of give people ways of what to worry about, what they should take note of, and the tools that they can use to get around the well, not get around, but be compliant with the new rulings. Did we lose James?
Was that meant to be a handover to me? I didn't
Yeah.
get the question. I didn't get that as a question there.
So I was saying that as a end user, as a HubSpot user, and you're starting to work with vendors and you're working with different consultants. Obviously, in the past, people have just put you on as a super user, where you can kind of go in there and you can change everything. But now there's a lot more consideration that needs to be taken into place when adding different vendors and suppliers into your HubSpot instances. So I know you're coming across a lot of those. So I was wondering if you could give a few examples of the tools HubSpot offers and ways of what people should be considering.
Oh yeah, I mean for sure, that is something that's coming up a lot with our clients recently. Like as HubSpot, with HubSpot, we get access obviously as a partner. If we're helping you with your account in different ways, and that means that we are exposed to quite a lot of data. We would generally have an agreement with you to sort of for the mutual protection of that data. But in some situations, clients do want to restrict that down further, and we spend some time to go with different permissions roles, not only for ourselves, but also for other external suppliers and for different teams within your own company and different roles in your own company. So that could be restricting down what data are visible based on the teams that are going to be interacting with that data. It might be that external suppliers doing technical support only have, in most situations, access to a subset test data within your account, so that we, unless we're doing that some other kind of diagnosis that requires access to live data. But there's various different ways that we can configure that so that we protect the different parties.
A lot of sandboxing and tools like that now that HubSpot's brought out recently. Yeah, and I think the other thing is, you know, you're talking about this, Guy, the PII. I think there's a common misconception that you can just take off the name and everything's going to be fine. What do you?
And that's not correct.
You know?
That is not correct at all. Within HubSpot as well, we can have different options for users that need to use HubSpot on a daily basis. And of course, if you have the contact view in there, it will show up the name of the person, but it will also show up the activity that this particular user has made, a form that they sent, a web page that they visited, and a lot of other specific behavior that they had. And this is not for the whole company. Okay, we need to restrict access for a lot of those informations. One of the things that we help clients a lot doing this is by creating conditional views for the deals, for the tickets, for the contacts in the companies. So I will see a company view, for example, because I have not a non-restricted access. I will see everything for the company, the invoices they sent us, the address, who owns the company and everything. And maybe you, Scott, for example, you will be restricted to see just the name of the company, their email, and their domain name, for example. Okay, we can create conditional cards to appear for different types of access in the account. And there's something that we like to use a lot, that clients ask a lot, is lock properties. Sometimes they even have access to see the property, but they cannot edit at all. So we can lock properties for some teams, some group of people inside the company, so they cannot change the information. These are things that it looks like there are details, but that are actually really important for the company to keep control of the information they're storing.
Right. Yeah, that's definitely a big consideration. And what about those that are working in different geographical locations? You mentioned if you've got a California office and a UK office, how would they go about trying to organize that data geographically?
That's a very good question, a very good question. Well, first, we need to remember, everyone, that HubSpot can be configured into different teams, the access through teams, for example. So we can build access for the California marketing, some social media team, for example, and they will have access to a few properties, to a few information, to edit different things. And well, we do this, we can have, for example, French office that they can see different things. So we can have a French marketing paid media team inside HubSpot with those employees, and they can perform different tasks. They can see different information in whether it's a ticket, it's a company, it's a contact, or a deal, for example, and they will be separated. But outside HubSpot, they are just a marketing team, a global marketing team. They talk to each other. They sit together to work, think about strategies and the performance reports. They can see the reports all together, for example, but they do not need to see the same contacts or deals or companies' information. And we can separate this. We've helped a lot of clients building a structure for access, internal access for their own employees and providers, for example, that some of the groups can do some things, some of the groups, they just cannot. This is very important. And a lot of clients ask specifically for this solution because they don't know how to think of a structure based on what they have. So we not only help them technically by separating these waters inside HubSpot, but also thinking about how can they have and can they manage these separations, whether they are geographic separations or just hierarchical separations, for example.
Got it. Great. I got a question here. It says, with the list that you showed before, if they consent to the marketing one and they become a customer, do they need to consent again?
That is such a good question, such a good question. So this can happen in basically, it does a lot more, but in basically two different ways. When they subscribe for the marketing content, for example, and they get information for your product, and they are still making that decision, and suddenly they realize, okay, I want to buy it. This is for me. This is a solution I'm looking for, and they buy it. Inside HubSpot, we will configure the system to understand that this person is now a client. It's a customer. And since they are a customer, your company whether is an explicit for a sign or not, you have a contract with this client, which means that you can all turn this user into a client in the system. In HubSpot, we'll have different types of subscriptions for him, and but especially access. Since they are now customers and your company needs to send, for example, some financial data because they're paying every month and you need to send their invoices and their receipts, and it comes with your credit card, the last 4 digits sometimes. HubSpot now has to understand that this is possible to do. It was not before because they were not a customer. When they buy your product, they become a customer, and this information can now be revealed just for them. So HubSpot will, and we will actually configure this so the access type and the type of information that we are providing the customer is a different one. So yes, the subscription gets updated because we configure that to happen.
Great. Got another question here, last one. The GDPR, when should you set that up? After you've configured your HubSpot or before you configure your HubSpot?
Another good question. We had a client before that was kind of a doubt that the GDPR was something that HubSpot would help them achieve. And they forgot that the GDPR is something way broader. You must comply with the GDPR in all your systems, in all your stores and everything else, not just HubSpot. So if someone comes to me and asks the same question, should I think about the GDPR before or after having my HubSpot account? I would say both. If you already have a HubSpot account, don't worry. It's still time to make things right. It's still time to comply. But if you still don't have a HubSpot account, no problem. You can talk to us. We can guide you the best way to create your account from scratch. We can help you have the account being born compliant with the technical regulations for HubSpot, for our GDPR inside HubSpot. But never forget one thing. Even if it's a store that someone walks in and you have a security camera recording there, you need to comply with the GDPR. There are digital information being recorded and being stored about this person. So there are a lot of different ways of doing this. We know how to do this inside HubSpot. So my answer would be, do not worry. It's always time. It's better now than later.
Awesome. Awesome. So I think that's all we have time for. James, any last comments to summarize it up?
Yeah, thanks very much for that, Guy. So as you can see, there are quite a few different considerations here, and we are here to support you if you do need us to. So if you do want to have some additional help with setting up HubSpot for GDPR compliance, if you want us to help take, say, information that your legal team's given you about how best your company can comply and put that into effect, or give you some general advice as well about where to go forwards, then yeah, just feel free to reach out to us. You can do that through hello@hubstart.io or through the form on the website hubstart.io, and someone will get in touch and we can have a further chat about it. So thanks very much, everyone, and we'll speak to you soon.
All right. Thanks.
James, thanks, Scott.
See you next time.
Bye-bye.